Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neal Howard. Thank you so much for joining us today. By utilizing patient-focused blood management strategies, health professionals can help health systems save money while saving lives and also help to reduce nationwide blood shortages. Our guest in studio today is Joe Thomas, Regional Director of Patient Blood Management for Acumen, and he's here with us to discuss patient-focused blood management strategies. Welcome to the program, Joe.
Thank you for having me, Neal.
Thanks. Now, you're the Regional Director of Patient Blood Management for Acumen. Talk about Acumen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Acumen is an organization that was developed as really a focus on laboratory optimization for health systems across the country. Mm-hmm. But a few years ago, recognized early on that a big part of optimizing the lab would be patient blood management, improving blood utilization. So this has been a major focus of the organization, is to establish the people, the process, and the technology to be able to support our client hospitals and organizations throughout the country to implement a comprehensive patient blood management program.
I'm aware that nursing has specialties within the field. Your patient blood management, director of patient blood management, have you got any experience as, say, a ER nurse or a critical care nurse? What is some of your background, and how did you end up with Acumen as a registered nurse?
Yeah, not a lot of ICU nurses end up in the space of patient blood management. In fact, there's probably only a handful throughout the country. But, as they say, sometimes your career chooses you versus you choosing it. So, a very brief background, cardiothoracic ICU nurse at the Cleveland Clinic. I was given an opportunity there to help really start a novel pilot program around bloodless medicine, but quickly saw, I think, the need for it to expand into more of a comprehensive patient blood management program. And so for years, served as the director of patient blood management or blood management at the time for within the Cleveland Clinic Health System. Was given the opportunity to partner with a nationally recognized anesthesiologist, Dr. Tim Hannon, years ago with a startup company, and then was given an amazing opportunity about 3 years ago by Acumen to really lead the vision and help to implement the people, process, and technology of our team. And so I guess they say arguably I have as much experience as anyone in the world, but I've actually had the honor of working with now over 160 hospitals to implement patient blood management programs over the last 14 years.
Now, when we're talking about patient blood management, different uses, I guess, for the blood needs, different strategies for its management. Now, you've developed a program that's nationally recognized for patient blood management, as you say, with these well over 100 hospitals in the United States. What does a blood management program entail?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me make sure that I go back very quickly just to define what comprehensive patient blood management is for those who may not have heard the other interview. And it's evidence-based utilization of blood products. So optimal transfusion therapy, that's sort of that first clinical concept. The second clinical concept is improving the recognition, diagnosis, and management of anemia. And then the third clinical concept is implementing strategies designed to reduce or eliminate bleeding and blood loss. Now, scientifically, that all makes perfect sense. The fact is, though, that, it's one of those factors where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Every hospital is doing something with those three clinical concepts that I defined. Mm-hmm. But a comprehensive patient blood management program puts it all together. And those types of programs are well documented to often reduce blood utilization by 40, sometimes up to 60%, which is incredible when you really think about it. So to answer your question now, and I apologize, Neal, that I digressed for a moment, but to answer your question, I think of it in 5 buckets. 1, infrastructure, or kind of world-class infrastructure and clinical champions. Mm-hmm. 2, evidence-based transfusion guidelines with oversight and utilization of, computerized physician order entry and decision support. 3, technology, basically having meaningful benchmarks, meaningful patient or physician level, department level, and hospital level data and analytics along with goals. 4, broad and effective clinical education and awareness campaigns. And 5, proactive. This is where it goes into those more proactive strategies designed to reduce transfusion risk. And this is more along those lines of having anemia management programs or again, multiple strategies throughout the hospital to minimize bleeding and blood loss. Again, I went through those pretty quickly. We can certainly revisit any of those, but all of those together, even some of the boring stuff like infrastructure, is critically important to implement a world-class patient blood management program.
Let's get into some of the proof that's in the pudding. Sometimes when you're looking to change strategy, implement new programs, you just need someone to say, hey, this is what happened with a client of mine or a friend of mine or a patient of mine. Talk about Acumen's success of the programs. Yeah,
absolutely. And I love what you said. And that's what I tell, prospective partnerships, the proof's in the pudding. Please reach out to our health systems because they'll tell you better than anyone, the success of really the partnership. So, we work with a number of very large health systems, anything from, two hospital health systems to 30 hospital health systems. But one of my, I call it babies, is a health system in the Midwest, 14 hospitals that really ranged from almost academic, liver transplant, heart transplant, bone marrow transplant, to even some relatively small hospitals had been spending about $13 or $14 million a year merely to purchase blood and was transfusing around 50-some thousand blood products every year. So as we started the program there, we, number one, as mentioned, we put together the right infrastructure, a system steering committee across the entire health system with representation from each hospital. Each of the hospitals had a committee or a task force. Each of the hospitals had an executive sponsor. They had a physician champion. They had a project lead, often someone from quality or nursing. And that infrastructure was the beginning of the success. We implemented, updated their transfusion guidelines. We implemented those into their computerized physician order entry system, built in some decision supports to make it easier to do the right thing and harder to do the wrong thing. When physicians went to order blood, the guidelines would be right there in their face, and again, defaulted and certainly built in some alerts to help ensure that physicians were making good decisions when they transfuse blood. Of course, guidelines are guidelines. They could deviate by all means, and sometimes patients need the guidelines to be deviated. But again, it helped physicians and providers make better decisions. They had several metrics around how they ordered and when they ordered the different blood products, both platelets, plasma, and red cells. And we worked with the physician group, leaders and groups to establish key metrics, key performance indicators along with goals, and really kept those goals front and center with the providers. We gave over 200 presentations across that health system in 6 months to every single physician and nursing group that existed. And we continued over the course of the last really 2 years now to roll out massive awareness campaigns with posters and flyers and pens, really reinforcing the messaging and the changes that we wanted them to implement. And lastly, we established a number of very proactive strategies, a preoperative anemia management program, working with their cardiac surgery and liver transplant teams to reduce, again, coagulopathies and bleeding. We also worked with some of their critical care groups to reduce the amount of blood that we draw off of their ICU patients. And really a dozen other projects that I won't bore you with, but again, it's that overall process that within 18 months had reduced blood use by 43% and a savings of over $4 million in just 18 months. It's not just red cells. We've also reduced platelets and plasma significantly over that time into double digits. So again, and we're just getting started, and that's the scary thing, is that a true comprehensive program, as I've said from the beginning, can absolutely reduce blood use by at least 40%, and arguably some up to 60%.
That's phenomenal. Where can our listeners get more information about Acumen?
Acumen.com, I hear is the best spot. Google us, but certainly, again, for those health care providers or administrators interested in learning more, please do reach out to us, and we'll be happy to share more information.
It's been great having you here in studio today with us, Joe.
Thank you for having me, Neal. It's been a pleasure.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Health Professional Radio, and I'm your host, Neal Howard, in studio with Joe Thomas, RN and Regional Director of Patient Blood Management for Acumen. He has clinical experience in both critical care nursing and patient blood management program development. A few years ago, back in 2002, he developed a nationally recognized program built around safer, more evidence-based blood utilization. Transcripts and audio of this program are available at healthprofessionalradio.com.au and also at hpr.fm. And you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes.